My name is Chris, and today we're going to see if the Onzow Zerodust is ruining your stylus. Welcome to the Vinyl Attack. Something I've long considered but never had any way to check has been the very real possibility that sticky stylus cleaners like the very popular Onzow Zerodust would leave behind a residue on your stylus after use. After all, as I've never encountered any type of an adhesive that didn't leave some sort of a residue behind when removed, it would stand to reason. Obviously things like tape and glue are a no-brainer, but what about all the products that claim they come right off with no residue? Blue tack or poster tack depending on where you live, removable hooks in several varieties, no residue tape, and other such products have always left something behind when being removed in my experience, no matter how little, even when they claim they don't. Recently, an article on Analog Planet has been garnering a lot of discussion, much of it heated, as a company called Wally Analog has shown a series of photos using a high-power microscope that would indicate that the Zerodust and other gel-type cleaners are indeed leaving a residue behind. A residue that is very difficult to remove and can ruin your sound, but more importantly, it can ruin your records. You see, when a residue is left to dry and harden, it can tear up the delicate grooves of your records because of the increased friction. The gold standard for a stylus is a diamond for a reason. It is extremely hard and low wearing, thus providing less friction against your record collection. When a coating forms on the outside of this, you no longer have as smooth a contact between your stylus and your vinyl collection. Yes, as we all know, both styli and records alike wear out and degrade over time, but the goal in cleaning both of these items regularly is to prolong this process as much as possible. This is one of the main reasons that the suitcase players like Crosley, Victrola, and countless others are so often vilified. They use rubies or sapphires as styli, which is a much softer stone. When doing so, you end up with increased friction between the stylus and the record, which acts as an abrasive, wearing out both objects as a result. Add in the fact that the tone arm is always set to a ridiculously high tracking force weight that cannot be adjusted, and you have a surefire recipe for disaster, but I digress. In this particular situation, the gel is more of an organic type of material, so the weight and amount in which it builds up will be completely random, thus affecting the setup of your cartridge as well. For those of you who have labored over the best possible turntable setup with rake angle, zenith, azimuth, and null points, I don't have to tell you how frustrating that would be. Additionally, having this type of buildup on your stylus will affect its tip mass, which throws off all the aforementioned settings out of whack and makes your cartridge perform poorly. You could expect more distortion on the top end, a muddied bottom end, and less sonic dynamics overall. If you're hearing this and you use a gel type cleaner, this could very well be why. But even the most casual of audio hobbyists are affected by this issue, as we're told repeatedly, no matter where we go, to clean our records and our styli for the best possible playback and life of our products. So what happens when one of the most recommended and widely used products end up with a very dangerous side effect?
It doesn't matter what I believe. It only matters what I can prove.
I reached out to Wally Analog to further inquire about the findings they posted, and one of their owning partners, J.R. Boisclair, quickly made himself available for a phone conversation. My first question, of course, was, how did you come across this problem? His response that while he was working on several cartridge analyses for clients, one of the many services his company provides, he started to come across more and more instances of some sort of buildup on the styli themselves. At first, JR thought much of it could simply be something as simple as sloppy epoxy during construction, but then the occurrences just increased. Realizing that something else was going on, he started to ask each client what they were using to clean their stylus, and the answer was almost always the same: the Onzow Zerodust or similar type of gel cleaner. In the 40-plus people JR asked, only 2 answered that they cleaned with something else, but in each instance, the cartridges were purchased used, and the current owner had no information on how the previous owner cleaned their stylus. This was all starting to add up. Taking some client cartridges to a contact he has at a major medical company nearby, he was able to get images with a type of microscope that probably cost more than my car. These incredibly sharp and high-resolution images clearly show just how much residue had been building on them. In each image, the amount of residual buildup is pretty startling if you're any sort of an audio hobbyist. From mainly just the tip of the stylus itself to moving almost all the way up the cantilever, this residue was clear to see under the microscope and clearly quite troubling. The next obvious step was to clean off the styli. Seems simple enough, right? Well, in this instance, it turns out that this was quite a difficult task. The residue, which turns out to be an oligomer, which is essentially the opposite of a polymer, telling us that it wasn't simply vinyl particles coming up from the grooves that were attached, was quite resistant to cleaning fluids, and the only way JR was able to remove it was through abrasion and persistence with a short-haired stylish cleaning brush. The oligomer residue is currently at the same medical laboratory waiting to undergo tests that can tell us more about its properties, including its resistance to UV rays, heat, additional liquid compounds, and the like, but it's clearly not a top priority for a major med lab, so we'll have to be patient on that front. In the meantime, both JR and Michael Fremer, who wrote the original article for Analog Planet, have started taking heat over these findings. People who have been using the Zerodust or products like it are of course claiming that they have no such problems, this isn't really proof, or that this is some sort of an agenda, while others are intent on labeling the duo as some sort of character assassins. I suppose I'm now throwing myself into that ring as well in a much smaller fashion by doing this video, but as I see it, for those who care about the condition of their hi-fi products, it is too important to not know. No one here thinks that Onzow or any of the other companies making gel cleaners are willfully peddling a product to you that they know will damage your records and styli, so the hope is that this will lead to more research on their part to address the issue. Presently, JR has been doing additional research of his own to make sure that it is indeed genuine Onzow Zerodust that is the culprit, and not just one of the cheap knockoffs that are flooding the market everywhere. He's in the process of procuring an authentic, brand new Zerodust cleaner right from Music Direct, and his aim is to start testing it in a controlled environment to see if the most serious results are repeatable. He also wants to check into the ways of using gel cleaners that might not leave a residue. For example, when a record is done playing, the stylus, through friction, is bound to be at its highest temperature. Does that increase the likelihood of the gel sticking to the stylus and surrounding areas? Additionally, he has purchased what is reported to be one of the most efficient stylus cleaners on the market, the Flux Hi-Fi Sonic Stylus Cleaner. This cleaner claims that its ultra-quick vibration can remove the toughest gunk in the shortest time with zero effort on your part. I'm aware that many are labeling this as an ultrasonic stylus cleaner, but I'm going to forego telling you why that isn't possible for the moment and simply instead wait to hear about the results, as that's what interests me most. While it would be safe to say that as of now, it is inconclusive as to whether or not it is specifically the Onzow Zerodust that is the biggest offender, it would seem so. But what about the other gel-type cleaners? While JR hasn't obviously encountered them all, the ones he has had dealings with are all producing similar results to a lesser degree. I myself have used the DS Audio ST50 stylus cleaner with minor regularity, and even though he says the DS Audio buildup isn't quite as bad and he'd like to do more testing before making any type of a comment, I can assure you that my using it stops today, at least until I learn more. A bit of a shame as it cost me $80. The obvious question then is, what is the best way to clean your stylus if not a gel type cleaner? Many of you are aware that several cartridge manufacturers don't recommend liquid cleaners or liquid cleaners with alcohol, as they can run up the cantilever with capillary action. This can affect the structural integrity of the cantilever, potentially gum up the inner workings, or worse. As it would happen, JR and I were in agreement with our methods, which were quite similar in nature. A good dry brush between plays, and a drop of cleaning fluid every couple of weeks to a month depending on how often you use your turntable. Yes, we're aware of the risks of using fluids, but trying to stick with brands that don't have an alcohol base like the Audio Intelligent brand or Last Stylus Cleaner can help abate those fears. The key is to put on very little. Put one drop on your stylish brush and let it settle. I even soak up some of the excess with a very corner of a paper towel to make sure there is hardly any fluid, then clean as normal. If you have doubts or fears about using a solution, you might try distilled water with the technique I just mentioned instead. Remember, dust on its own doesn't really stick to anything that doesn't have static or liquid adherence, so the dust on your stylus should come off relatively easily if maintained regularly and properly. Since the discovery of the oligomer residue, JR has been asking every customer he works with what they're using to clean their stylus, as he simply encountered too many problems in an increasing amount of ruined carts. If you've been using the Zerodust or any of the gel-type cleaners, I would certainly caution you to think twice before the problem gets too big to solve, short of replacing your cartridge. Now, do I believe that this occurrence is willful neglect? No, I don't. I believe that the people at Onzow put in a lot of hard work creating a product that is as pliable as the Zerodust, yet doesn't puncture under a sharp diamond stylus and does indeed remove dust. The unfortunate byproduct is that the residue left behind builds up to cause more problems than it solves. At the time of this recording, the people from Onzow have not returned my email inquiries about the latest discovery, but I hope to hear from them in time to see if they have any findings on the matter. I'd certainly like to hear from you about this seemingly controversial issue in the comments below. Until JR's additional results about gel cleaners comes in, however, I know I'm taking my $80 DS Audio gel cleaner and placing it on the shelf. A good dry brush between plays and a little wet clean once a month will be my preferred method until I find something better. Rest assured that if I do, you'll be the first to know. Thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon who help make these videos possible. Huge thanks to Jared Boisclair of Wally Tools for the incredible source of information, and thank you for dropping by. I look forward to next time.